Hi, and welcome to episode 88. Today, my guest is Kelly Charles Collins. Kelly is the CEO of Ladies Who Leverage, which I love that name, where she empowers women to leverage their expertise, resources, and relationships to build their business brand and badassery. A retired attorney, award winning TEDx speaker, author, and mentor, Kelly is on a mission to create safe spaces for women to create influence and impact and unapologetically own their power so they can live the life they've always envisioned. And I met Kelly on a clubhouse call with my friend and occasional client, uh, Heather Ann Havenwood. And so that was a lot of fun, and it was really great to meet you. And I'm glad you're here.
It is so good to be here. Thanks, Ellen. And yes, that clubhouse boy, it's connecting a whole lot of people who otherwise would not be connected. It's an awesome
It
space.
is. Yeah, it
Hmm.
is. I haven't been on a lot lately because I've just been too busy, but I'm amazed when I go on there how many people there are on there making millions. There's
Yes.
a lot of very high-end people on there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And things
So,
you can learn and even from the people who are just starting out.
mhm.
Sometimes you spend a lot of time in those rooms where, the millionaires are because obviously you want to know what they're doing.
Right.
But it's also
I
interesting to hear what, other people are doing who are just starting out.
mhm. Yeah, no, there's interesting people in all different areas, but I
Hmm.
was just really struck by that because they say that it's the 5 people you're closest to that
Hmm.
determines your wealth. And I thought I was hanging out with pretty interesting, successful people, but there it was like a flood and every time I'd go into one of those rooms. So,
Yeah.
not just a few or one leading the pack, but I mean a lot of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about Ladies Who Leverage and how you got started and how that came about?
Well, Ladies Who Leverage, as you mentioned earlier, is a global community of women, and I started it in March, like right before the pandemic really started to take hold. The
Mhm.
idea, though, started in late 2019, and what I really wanted to do, it wasn't going to be Ladies Who Leverage. I wanted to start a group like a sister circle for lawyers, for female
Mhm.
lawyers. So I had practiced law for over 20 years. And I realized that in the profession, we really needed a space to be able to just talk to each other, share our experiences, and share how we navigated through, or are able to navigate through that very white male dominated space. And what was interesting though is that I put together this whole thing, and when I talked to some female lawyers about it, I got pushback. Like they were resistant to the fact of what I was doing.
Mhm.
And so that threw me off. But I didn't, I wasn't going to be deterred. And I had to really think about, why are you doing this? And the whole point is to empower women. So
Mhm.
it didn't have to be just lawyers. And that's how I came up with Ladies Who Leverage. Leverage is one of my favorite words. And so I was just trying to think of, what is it that I want women to be able to do.
Mhm.
And I wanted women to be able to have a space where they could ask for what they want, ask for what they need, and that they didn't have to jump through the hoops of traditional quote unquote networking, where we've been trained to get into small talk and do all of those things for however long period of time
Mhm.
before you can ask somebody or really engage somebody around what it is that you want to help move your business forward. I just wanted them to come in. What do you need? What do you want? How can we support you? Let's get moving, and in the process we'll get to know each other.
Mhm.
So that's really how Ladies Who Leverage came about, and it has grown to be something more than I could ever have imagined.
Yeah, I mean, I was immediately attracted to it. I mean, it's a great title, and anybody who's been listening to me for any length of time knows I love, love, love alliterations. So, it's because they always work really well. And it's interesting because so many women that I know, their businesses are about women, and women driven. Mine is not, but I do have more women clients I have had more women clients over the years than men. But it's so interesting because the men tend to be more, well, first of all, they've got more money. right?
Hmm.
Because men just
Right.
generally do have more money, and the culture is different, and they're more comfortable spending the money, and they're more comfortable. Well, I won't say all of them because now that I've been hanging out with more higher end people, there are a lot of women that I see now that are, um, that they do get the value of education and they are willing to spend.
Hmm.
But over the years, for what I offer, I have always had more men than
Yeah.
women step up to the high end offers. And so I was doing well, I've done many masterminds, and when I was doing the masterminds, I noticed that women had issues that men didn't have.
Mm.
And so when you and I started talking, I thought, even though my business is not, women, I thought this was an important conversation to have because there are differences, and there are also different things that happen for women than happen for men just by virtue of being women.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so when you and I started talking and we had a conversation about this, off camera as we were getting to know each other, but I wanted to bring it on. I said camera or audio, whatever, however you're
Bring it
consume,
out to the world.
yeah, however you're consuming this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
So,
think that's so true, Ellen,
yeah.
because even in business, right? So there's so many women who own businesses, and if we
Hmm.
look at what's happened in the pandemic, how women business owners have been so impacted, or even women in careers
Right.
have been disproportionately impacted, by the pandemic, and we
Hmm.
do, I was saying, ask for what you want, ask for what you need. Men have no problem with doing that, right? They have no problem with doing away with the niceties and not following the rules around those things.
Exactly.
Whereas, that's what we've been taught to do. And so we're going to act like the lady, act like a lady, be polite, and okay, that's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to just go in and say, hey, I'm Kelly Charles Collins. This is what I do. Would love to know a little bit about you to see if there's some way that we can, work together. No,
Hmm.
we're taught go ask about their dog and their cat and their family and whatever, and then maybe 2 months from now, after you've nurtured everything, right? Men don't worry about all of that stuff, right? And so I think it's an important lesson for us to learn to be able to just speak up, right?
Yeah.
Just really be out there.
Well, one of the problems for me, and it's so interesting that you're an attorney because my dad was an attorney,
Hmm.
my uncle was an attorney, and then a judge. My grandfather was a judge, and I have cousins who are attorneys. And my dad used to, I mean, remember, this is like the 70s, right? The
Hmm.
1970s. But my dad had a real problem with women lawyers, you know?
Hmm.
He didn't like women lawyers, right? And women judges. And yet he wanted me to be an attorney, which there was a very weird dynamic going on there, right? A dichotomy. But the thing that he said to me that was the most disempowering thing ever was he said, I don't care if you ever make a nickel. I want just be nice.
Hmm.
That was what my father actually said to me. And when and as I grew and I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, and my dad adored me. Like, I know had no clue
Yep.
how that landed, you
Hmm.
know, but that was just insane. And then
Yeah.
the other side of it was, thinking that I should go to law school and become a lawyer. Well, every day you're telling me how much you can't stand women lawyers. Also, it does not make me want to be a lawyer.
Right.
Aside from the fact that just, dealing with people's problems all the time. He was a medical malpractice and PI attorney. And I mean, we would hear the most horrid stories all the time about terrible things that happened to people. And I didn't want to live my life in that energy, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's a hard profession to be in, and almost regardless of the area of practice. If you're doing a lot of transactional stuff, it might not be. But
Mhm.
I think they also have their burdens. But being a lawyer is a very hard space to be in. And as a woman, I know in the last few years of my practice, I experienced some of the worst bias, outright sexism,
Mhm.
racism that I experienced in the 24 years that I practiced.
Mhm.
And, for me, I've always spoken up for myself and I could stand up for myself. But even still in those spaces, just having to have to do that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And and having to have to do it because I know that there are women who could not for fear of losing their job or whatever other retaliation that they would face, where I didn't care. Right
Mm-hmm.
at that point I was just like, I don't care. um it's stressful, and it's disheartening because we're in 2021 and we're still on this mission of trying to find equality within that profession. And it's
Yeah.
gonna I don't know that that's ever gonna happen. I mean, they say there's what, 5% of lawyers are women
Mm-hmm.
and 2% are women of color.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's however many hundreds of thousands of lawyers probably in the United States. So
Well, I think it's good the more that we have public figures who are women. I think that helps.
yeah.
I think it's great that Kamala Harris is vice president, but I do worry that when her time comes that they won't elect her because she's a woman.
Yeah.
I do think about things like that,
And a black woman.
and it pisses me off. But you also told me something that I thought was really interesting because it's something I've heard over and over and over again from people who are successful. And that was, you said, what were you told as a kid? You were told
Oh,
you
that I could be and do anything that I put my mind
exactly. Yeah.
to. Hmm.
Yeah. I was not told that.
Hmm.
I was not told that. I mean, the culture in my house was, especially for women, was like, my mother was, a 50s housewife, and she hung her degree from USC over the kitchen sink. And that was her protest that she was so brilliant. And that was as far as she got, was our kitchen sink, right? You
Hmm.
know, but I also think that she had a lot of fear too about going out in the world. Like, it's
Yeah.
easier to blame the world and what's going on out there than to take the blame yourself and say, I'm going to do something about it, because there are other people of her generation that did do other things you know
Yeah. I was raised by a strong woman,
hmm
around strong women. The women in my family are highly educated.
hmm
I grew up in Jamaica until I was 9 years old, and women ran the households, right? They ran the households, but they also worked outside of the house.
hmm
So for us, like when I grew up in Jamaica, I had well, we called them helpers, what you call in the United States a maid
hmm
or a nanny, right? So we grew up, but so my mother was at work, my father was at work, and we were raised, by our helper. So I've always known my mother to be outside of the
hmm
home.
hmm
And I've just always been whatever I wanted to do, whatever I wanted to accomplish. I was never told, no, you can't do that, or you're a girl, so you can't.
hmm
That was just never part of my upbringing. And so, as I've gone through life and things have happened, um, I just know, well, whatever is next, then you just go do do whatever is next.
hmm Yeah, mine was more women were in like the traditional, teachers, social workers, and the men were the professionals. And I just find this whole thing fascinating between women who were brought up by strong women and women who, like me, were brought up by women who were frustrated, overeducated, and underperforming.
Yeah.
And the only saving grace for me was I looked at my mom, I looked at my dad, and I said, my mom is unhappy and angry and frustrated. And my dad's the one who goes out in the world and he's a kick. So I think I'd rather be more like my dad. And
Yeah.
and I always and because he also, even though he was a lawyer, he was always an entrepreneur. He always had a side thing going. At one
Hmm.
point it was disposable brushes for hospitals, and then it was, fruit stands and just different things, and he had the desire to be a millionaire, even though he was on paper, but he never got it mentally that he
Hmm.
was, and that he could have that lifestyle if he had changed a few things, but he just didn't get it.
Yeah.
But
My mom was a teacher.
uh-huh.
My godmother is a social worker. My
Yeah.
aunts were nurses,
That's what I
right? And
mean.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I just always knew that whatever it was, and I never dreamt of being a lawyer. That was never, um, my grandfather, my mom's dad was a lawyer,
Mhm.
but that was never anything that I wanted to do. When I was little, I wanted to be a bank lady or a truck driver. And so I don't know where the truck driver came from, but I didn't decide to go to law school until I was 21 with a 1 year old,
Mm.
almost 1 year old. So, yeah.
Well, I was going to say something and I forgot what it was about that. Oh, I was going to say, so I'm fascinated by the conversation of like people who were told they could do anything versus
Hmm.
people who were not told that or who were put down or, and yet there are people who go through really terrible things and they still rise to the top, but there are also way more that are brought up that way that struggle, you know? And I know people look at me as being successful, but I have had more than my share of struggle because of because of what I was told as a kid. But it also, um, you know, it's great when you see people, and I have a friend who's on Facebook, and I love her because she's very upfront about her life is a mess and it doesn't stop her from making a lot of money,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And that was really important for me because I've been through a lot of messes and, it was saying, well, if you can do that, I can do that too.
Yeah. It's really about a decision, right? We have
Mhm.
it we get to decide. We
Mhm.
get to decide whether we allow what people have placed upon us
Mhm.
or the things that we have been through in life. We get to decide whether we continue to allow those things to take us one way or another.
Mhm.
We have that decision making power no matter what has happened to us in life. We do have that decision making power
Mhm.
unless something neurologically or somewhere where we can't make decisions.
Mhm.
But setting that aside, um we really do, right? We really do. We can, just like we can get up in the morning and decide that we're just gonna say, woe is me, I've had a horrible life, that nothing good is gonna come from this.
Mhm.
We could get up in the morning and say, you know what, woe is me, I had a horrible life, I'm not going to let this continue, I am going to do something different. So
Mhm.
it really is about choosing, right? And the power to
Yeah,
choose.
I think that though once you decide that even if you decide that there is something that could be better,
Hmm.
I think what's really important is surrounding yourself with those people. I
Right.
have found that has been huge for me. And it's also been big for to go back to what I was saying before about, doing masterminds, I found that the women didn't charge as much for their services as the men.
Mm.
And when we would ask them, because I had a partner in some of the masterminds, Betsy Hall, and we would ask them, well, why don't you raise your prices or, what's stopping you from doing that? And it was like they just had a hard time accepting that they were worth it. And the idea of always putting other people first.
First, yes.
Yeah.
I still do that.
Yeah.
I think that is something for me.
Mhm.
And when you're talking about pricing and what you're doing with your business, it
Mhm.
is one of the things that I am a social worker at heart. And
Mhm.
so I do think about, but what if they can't afford it and I
Mhm.
really want to help everybody and I
Mhm.
just want to do this and I just want to do that. And we do it sometimes to our own detriment,
Mhm.
right? But it is something that we have to move through. And one of the things that I have to always fall back on is just knowing my worth and knowing my value, and really standing in my power to be able to say, no, this is what,
Mhm.
this is what
Mhm.
it is. But yes, that is something I think for women, the nurturing spirit that we have
Yeah.
really,
It's
it's like a
good and it's
battle.
bad. It's good and
Yeah,
it's bad.
right,
It
right.
makes us better coaches, right? It
Yeah,
makes us better
yeah,
coaches. We're more
yeah.
empathetic. But
But
yeah, right, but we
it
can
costs
like
us our bank account.
right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and uh, that was a hard lesson for me too, was the letting go of the clients for a long time that just like that I shouldn't work with. Like it
Mhm.
was just too stressful or it was just too hard. But I'll tell you was one thing that was really telling. I had a client that I worked with and he had a partner that they were writing the book together and I was walking them through the process and editing while they were writing, going back and forth, and then we did all the publishing, editing, formatting, book covers, all that, and then we did a number one bestseller launch, and it took about 6 months. And when it was all, and I was charging $7,500 at the time, and he said to me, this is way too cheap. You need to double your prices. And the next day I doubled my prices and
Oh
my next
boy.
client paid me, well, he didn't pay me 15,000, he paid me 13,000 because he had his own web team, but which I swear after doing that I would never do that again. It has to be my team because
Right.
they never listen to you, right? But but the point was it was shocking to me that somebody would pay twice as much, right?
Just because
Uh,
you asked for it.
because I asked for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I always say, a lot of times people ask me about being in the speaking business because I'm also a professional speaker.
Mhm.
And, when I tell them what I charge to
Mhm.
speak for the amount of time that I speak for, and they're like, oh my gosh, how can you charge that much? And I said, listen, if you can't say it, they won't pay it. Period.
Love that. Yeah, it's true.
If you don't believe it,
Yeah.
if you say it's 7,500 and then they're like, okay, because that's what makes you feel comfortable, but you could get just as comfortable to say it's 15,000.
Right. Well, one of the tricks that I had to do with myself, and
Mm-hmm.
this is a tip for everybody listening, is I just had to say, when the next time I'd be talking to somebody, I just had to really like get in my body and just say what that price is,
Yep,
and
and shut up.
right, and let myself be uncomfortable with
Yeah.
how big a number, how big a
Yep.
number it is, right? And do it
Yep.
anyway, and just be uncomfortable, but like my face wouldn't show it. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
like I'm not going to
Yeah.
cringe or
You
or let that
can, but
no.
inside you're like,
Right
did
inside, you're
I
like,
just
"Oh
say
my
that?
god." Yeah, yeah.
I remember going from, so when I started speaking, so this was 2 years ago, really, as a
Mhm,
professional speaker.
mhm,
Um, I started out at 7,500,
mhm,
and that was a little bit scary, right?
mhm,
Trying to, and I was thinking to myself, what are you scared of? You've been practicing law for 20 something years. Like,
mhm.
there is probably should be making more than that. And then I remember one day, so then I went to 10,000. I remember one day I was talking to a woman. She wanted to hire me to do a webinar, and I called my coach and I said, you got to tell me what I'm supposed to charge, right?
Mhm.
I'm like, she wants me to do a webinar and it's 90 minutes, and she was like, it's $10,000. I'm like, no, 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 I'm doing a webinar. She goes, yeah, same thing, doesn't matter, that's your
Oh.
rate. And I was like, oh my God, no. I said, it has to be something else. So she said, okay, can you say 7,500 and be okay? And I was like, yeah, I can say that, right? And then from there on, I just said, you know what, just say the number. It is what it is,
Mhm,
right? And shut up, right? Say the number and shut up.
mhm.
Because in that silence, they have to fill the silence. Otherwise, you're
Right.
gonna fill it. And if you fill it,
You
what you're
blow
gonna
it.
do is show, right, exactly. Exactly. Or maybe like you say, well, it's 10,000, but if you, no, 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 there's no but, it is that. Right. And then you can negotiate, right? You can negotiate off of that number. But,
Yeah,
I tell people, like, when you're negotiating, their budget means nothing, right? You're not
right,
negotiating off their budget. You're negotiating on your numbers. What is your
right.
bottom? What is your top?
Right, but here's the thing too, if you charge from where you're coming from,
Uh huh.
right? Like, let's say you're making $100,000, and so, 10,000 is 10% of that, right?
Hmm.
So that seems like a lot. But if you realize that there are people making 500,000 or $1,000,000 a year, that 10,000 is nothing.
Yeah.
What if it was 20,000 or
Yeah.
30,000 or even
Yeah.
50,000,
Yeah.
right?
Now my rate's 20,000, and I just say it. It
Yeah,
is what it is.
it's not it don't come from your perspective, come from their perspective,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like what's the value of it and what they can afford and how much are they willing to pay for that? But whenever I would come from my perspective is when I would get in trouble.
Mm.
Especially when I was struggling, which was, oh, well, I don't want to charge them that much. Oh, well, they can't afford it. Or sometimes like somebody came to me, this is a true story. Somebody came
Mm.
to me and actually was asking me for money, right, was asking me to loan the money and telling me they needed it and they couldn't get it or whatever, and I was telling them like 10 ways they could make that money in a minute. It wasn't that much money,
Mm.
actually. And then a few weeks later I see they're giving away all this money for something. I'm like, what? And you're asking me to give you. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't get it.
Yeah. Because you think about it, people don't iPhones, the newest car, the newest bag, whatever, they'll figure out how to go get that stuff, right? So same thing when they come to you, just figure out how to go get it. I'm a trained mediator, and so I understand negotiations. Like, I'm a
Mhm.
master at negotiating. I understand where the power lies in numbers,
Mhm.
and using those numbers. And so for me, like, I don't care what the other side's number is. I have a number. I have a top and a bottom. So
Mhm.
we're negotiating between those two numbers. We're not negotiating their numbers. I don't care. Their
Mhm.
number has to fit in that top and my top and bottom. And if
Mhm.
it doesn't, then there's nothing for us to talk about. But I
Mhm.
think that's where the power lies, right? In understanding what your walkaway is.
Yes. So, with ladies that leverage, I mean, what are some of the big lessons or, things that you see people going through or and tips that you have, to help them?
Yeah. So I think in ladies who leverage, the biggest thing that I think the women have gotten out of it is the power of community and the
Mhm.
power of association. And just like you were saying, being around people who are doing the things that you aspire to do, or people that you aspire to quote unquote be. And being able to be in a safe space where you can finally, ask the questions that in other spaces you may feel like, if I say this, I'm gonna sound dumb, or people are gonna think that I don't have any sense, or I don't have any business acumen. And
Mhm.
so really being able to have that community that is pushing you forward from wherever you are. We
Mhm.
meet people where they are and help to propel them forward. And so the women have just done amazing things. We've had people end up writing books that they've been thinking about for years. And over now in this last year, they've written a book. People who have been, had 6-figure months who hadn't had those before, are very
Mhm.
close to that. People who have, started new lines in their business and, doing all kinds of other things. So what it has done, and what the women talk about all the time, is the inspiration that they get from watching the other women do
Mhm.
things,
Yeah.
and just knowing that I can do that too, whatever my that is, right? It's not about
Mhm.
competition, it's not about comparison, but it's about seeing the potential, right? And really being able to stand in your greatness and really think, yes, I can do that. I can own my power and I can be that person.
Well, let me ask you a question. When people come into your group, do you ask them what their biggest challenge is?
I do.
Yeah, because I do too.
Mhm.
Okay, so what's their biggest challenge?
It's all over the place. So,
Oh.
a lot of them, because the women in the group are full time entrepreneurs, women with a side hustle, or women
Mhm.
in transition. So,
Mhm.
it might be that we have aspiring entrepreneurs, have no idea where to start, just know that they want to do something, but just don't even know where to begin.
Mhm.
You have those women who have already started their business, but perhaps don't know how to really build or grow their business. And then you have the ones who have been in business and now are on the scale end of it, right?
Mhm.
How do I scale? And we have everything almost in between. And so it might be, how do I gain more clients? How do I market? How do I, build an offer? How do I know what rates to charge? I'm a speaker. How do I know what rates to charge? How do I know
Mhm.
what to speak about? How do I find clients in whatever type of industry you're in? So it's really interesting because it really does run the gamut,
Mhm.
and it's fascinating because I think the questions and the things that they tell me about their challenges are probably things that they've had for a while, that they don't have a space that they could say that
Oh,
that's their
safe space. So
challenge.
it is all women, men are not allowed
It's
into the
all
group?
women.
Mhm.
No, men are not allowed in terms of the group. I do bring men in as experts, because one of the
Mhm.
things that we do
Mhm.
monthly is have for the women who are investors. So ladies who leverage is twofold. One is our community of everyone who is in Facebook, which is free. And then we also have what are called ladies who leverage investors, which is the paid part of our membership.
Mhm.
And one of the benefits of that is that we have expert roundtables. So every month, experts on different topics come in and train the women in those
Mhm.
areas. So we bring men in for that. But yeah, generally, no.
Well,
It's a
how
safe
where
space
where
for
is the
women.
group? If women wanted to join the group, how can they join your group?
So if they want to join the group, they can go to lwlinvestor.com.
Okay, lwlinvestor.com. Okay, so you said writing books. So you wrote a book.
Mm-hmm. I've written a book, like a regular book. I've written an ebook, and I have a mini book.
Oh, okay. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you use your books?
Mostly as a calling card, or like a big business card. When
Mhm.
I wrote my first book, um, I just did it because I said I wanted to. Most things in life I do because I
Mhm.
just say, oh, I could do that.
Mhm.
I wrote my first book because I had been speaking about workplace investigations and had been doing them as a lawyer for over 20 something years.
Mhm.
And there were just questions people kept asking. And so I just turned my PowerPoint into a book. I
Oh.
just decided I was going to turn my presentation into a book. And I
Mhm.
never thought about it in terms of, trying to get it to be a bestseller,
Mhm.
or I didn't even really, I mean, I read stuff and looked at stuff, but I really didn't know how to market the book or do any
Mhm.
of that type of stuff with the book. So, associations will purchase it every now and then. I get my royalty checks because it's on Amazon. Somebody will
Mhm.
buy it, but I never have really pushed
Well,
that
you
book.
speak a lot, right?
I do speak a lot. I don't speak as much about that topic anymore.
Ah,
Mhm.
okay. Yeah, because speaking is a really great way to
Yeah.
promote book sales. But
Yeah.
also, like you just said, associations and,
Mhm.
when you're giving a talk. And one of the things that one of the women suggested on one of these calls that I thought was really great was she was saying, like, if they couldn't afford her speaker fee, but
Mhm.
sometimes they would buy books
Yeah.
instead and then give them
Yeah.
to people. And I thought that, yeah, that's a really
That
great,
happened the other day. So I
yeah.
actually did speak about workplace investigations the other day, which is the
Uh-huh.
first time that I've done it in a while. And
Uh-huh.
that's what they did. It was an association and they couldn't pay my speaker fee, but they bought my books.
Mm. So, we're getting to the end of this conversation. So,
Mhm.
the question I want to ask you though is, what tips do you have for people, like if they're not in that space yet,
Mhm.
where they're making the dreams come true, and it's because of all the things we've talked about today on this call? What would you say is the thing they need to do first?
I think the thing you need to do first is build your squad, right?
Okay.
So find the people, whether it's coaches are, a must. I think having a coach is a must, and the right coach. So just not any coach, but you need to have the right coach. And you may have to have multiple coaches, which I do because they each are teaching me different things and helping me to do different things.
Mhm.
But that's part of building your squad. Get, like we have in Ladies Who Leverage, the community of women who are around you, who will lift you up, who will support you, but who will also, hold you accountable and correct you
Mhm.
if you need to be corrected. So that's what I would say. That is the foundation, is to have those people around you, because they will then help you to find the resources, the other relationships, the training, the expert, whatever it is that you need to
Mhm.
help you to move forward.
Nice. Okay. The one last thing I wanna say going back is, I wish I'd said it at the time, but I didn't, was when you were talking about not doing, anything to market the book. Um, you know, when people launch, it's called a book launch, but the truth is you can do a promotion anytime.
Hmm.
So really the thing about whether you should do a promotion or not really has to do with, is that what you're speaking about? Is that where your business is going? If it's not,
Yeah.
no, go on to something else. But if it
Yeah.
is, then you can always do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing with my last book. Is
Mhm.
that's the mini book,
Mhm.
and that's what I'm going to focus on now in terms of of my books, because the other one I don't really want to speak about that topic too
Mhm.
much anymore. And so this one, which is about it's called Conversations Change Things: The Perfect Framework for Courageous Conversations,
Mhm.
which is absolutely needed everywhere right now,
Mhm.
is the one that I'm going to focus on. And like you said, doing promotions. I had just had another client who purchased almost 1,000 books because, as
Yay!
to do in their for their little swag bags.
That's
And so yeah,
awesome.
so I'm going to be
Uh,
speaking for them, but they also purchased the books to
uh-huh.
for their swag bag.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, I'm so happy for you. Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so how can people reach you? We said they can go to the Facebook group.
Yes.
Is that the best place, or is there somewhere
Yeah,
else?
that's the best place. If
Okay.
you want to know about Ladies Who Leverage, I would go to lwlinvestor.com, and it'll take you where you need to go as far as the Facebook group. For my speaking, it would be kellycharlescollins.com.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
You're
I love this
welcome.
conversation. I think it's really important, and I do think women need safe spaces. And yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours on the subject, but yeah, let's just say that I went into entrepreneurship because that was where I felt I didn't have to deal with a lot of that nonsense,
Yeah.
you know. So I think this is a much better path for women, especially, than trying to be corporate or do things where you've got bosses and men telling you what to do. I don't take direction very well. I don't like people telling me what to do.
Right.
Okay. So, next is books, open doors, insights. Well, I've already given you some tips today about on book marketing and launches and promotions and different things. But one of the things that Kelly and I were talking about before we got on the call was having a book designed, a book cover. And one of the things that I learned actually from Jeff Walker was, and I was doing it anyway, I just didn't understand the strategy behind it, basically. But when you're honing in on creating a book cover, then what you want to do is, if you get it down to, two, three, four, when you're getting down to the ones you really like the most, is run them by your audience and get them to engage. And I thought, in the beginning, well, you're doing that because you want to know which one they want to buy. But aside from that, what he said is that it helps you to get your audience engaged in the process, and that when they're engaged in the process, they are actually more apt to buy the book. So that is the tip. And then Kelly mentioned that she had used a site called Pickfu, Pickfu, to ask. So there you go. So when you're working on a book cover, if you want to get that feedback, go to Pickfu and make sure you get it so that your audience is engaged and more in the process and following you, so that when it's ready, they're excited and they want to buy it. Okay. So that's it for today. To get the transcripts, go to http:// booksbusinessabundance.com/podcast. You're also welcome to join my Facebook group of visionary speakers, coaches, and heart centered entrepreneurs and authors who want to self publish and use their book to make a bigger impact, more money, and a lasting legacy. And if you're ready to write your book the fast and easy way, you're welcome to join our waitlist for the next 5-day bestseller breakthrough challenge. It was coming up in April, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, it'll be later, closer to the summertime. And that's at bestsellerbreakthrough.com. If you need to get started now or want to get your feet wet, be sure, if you haven't gotten it already, get the book planner Secrets, a simple 4-step guide to writing a bestseller, on the podcast page. Again, that's https:// booksbusinessabundance.com/podcast if you're not on that page already. For anything else, you can contact me at Ellen at Books Open Doors. So till next time, bye bye.